Well, welcome everybody. At least for the next few minutes, my name is Stuart Rosenfield, and I'm the president of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. Welcome to our 2022 annual meeting and program. And to kick it off, I'm going to introduce Deborah Polsky, who for 10 years has been our executive director, and she'll tell you about the year in review.
Neither of us really needs a microphone. Okay, it's been a great year in many ways. Thanks for sharing. We've had a lot of things going on this year. We're still kind of recovering from the whole COVID thing. So we're not in the office nearly as much, but that'll probably change once day camp is over. And we're not so afraid to come back to the office. So we participated in North Texas Giving Day. We participated in the JCC Senior Expo. With the JCC, we co-sponsored a film, Children of the Inquisition, and we've sponsored an author for the book JCC Book Fest, Billy Wilder in Germany before the war. We also brought in virtually Andy Hill, who played for John Wooden at UCLA, and he did a wonderful program for us. We've had a lot of great things happening. With only 10 volunteers, 500 volunteer hours were spent this year, and that's great. We're thrilled about that. We've had 4 Jewish Family Service interns. We have two last summer and 2 this summer, and they each have special projects that they're working on that Jessica, our archivist, has designed to meet their needs. We have 1 SMU graduate fellow who's interning with us. She's doing some research on resistance after disasters, and she's using part of our oral histories to see who she can talk to and who she wants to talk to. We've also had a couple of grad students who were researching different things. One most interesting was researching Southern merchants, and she knew that the Jewish community was a great source of merchants in the South. So she came and did some research in our archive, which is wonderful because that's why we're there. We've done 2 oral history training workshops. We're always happy to train people to interview for oral history programs. And unfortunately, we've only done 9 this year. We have about 750 that are already in our archive. And it now has a new name. It is the Morton Rachofsky Oral History Archive, thanks to a lovely gift from the Sam Feldman family. And so if anybody thinks they'd be interested in spending 45 minutes to an hour talking to somebody about their life, we'd love to have you. We have 34 Trailblazer members, and the Trailblazers are people who give at the $500 or up level. And this has increased every year, we're happy to say. We did get a Federation grant last year, 2 years ago. So we have been able to have a part-time archive assistant. One of the things that got done is Ginger Jacobs of Shalom left us her very, very, very large collection. It has now been gone through, and eventually it will be available on the website. But we were able to get an article into the Journal of the Southern Jewish Historical Society about it. So we're excited about that. And we have a new person now, Christina, who is working on the Renee Stanley collection, which is also very sizable. And she's also trying to standardize our oral history input. We have some things that are great. We've gone to a rolling membership, which means if you join in June, your membership renews in June. If you join in November, your membership renews in November, rather than trying to get everybody all at the same time. So it's kind of an experiment. We have a new and kind of constantly updated website. One of the wonderful things that happened this year is that Jessica, our archivist, had a baby. So we are lucky enough to have Echo come to the office occasionally. We also were the recipients of a legacy gift from the estate of Jim Alexander. Rosalie Alexander, and we'll give out more information about that. On the downside, we are running out of space. Essentially, we have run out of space. We have what we thought was a pretty good archive when they built it in 2007, but we have taken in so many wonderful things that we're running out of space. And so our challenge in the next 2 years is to figure out what we're going to do. We were able to move our own records out, so that made a little extra room, but not so much. And the best thing that happened this year was that we celebrated our 50th anniversary at a really fun event. All we wanted was a big party, and that's really what it was. So it's been a good year. It's always important to look to the future, and there are things that we want to make happen. We want to increase genealogy research. We want to figure out our space needs. We want to get more volunteers. There's a lot of things that are on our plate for the future, but the future looks bright. We often say we are the best kept secret in the Dallas Jewish community, and I suspect there are people in this audience who didn't know who we were before tonight, that you had a reason to come. But we're growing, and we're so thrilled that you're here. Thank you. Okay, that's his.
All right. Thank you, Deborah. We'll welcome everyone to our 2021-2022 annual meeting. As many of you know, this is my last meeting as president of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. I became a board member 11 years ago. Our organization was known, but by a much smaller number of people than it is today. We had an archive with less than half of the artifacts that we have today. These artifacts weren't properly cataloged and certainly weren't digitally available to view. We had a couple of hundred oral histories done, but they were only viewable if you went into the office. We had a website with a basic design and even more basic information. We had no social media presence. We had a staff, but the dedication of the organization wasn't where it needed to be. We were financially solvent, but not by much. We had a board of directors, but most were just passing through, coming to board meetings, but never really moving the organization past where it was a few years earlier. With the help of Andrea Weinstein and Jim Schwartz, we began a revitalization of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society 10 years ago and have established a solid platform for rapid growth. Our first step was hiring a new executive director. Deborah Polsky had two qualities which stood out to us: a history of Jewish nonprofit service to the Dallas Jewish community and a passion for the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. Today, no one is more closely identified with DJHS than Deborah. When I mention that I'm a part of the DJHS, I always hear, "Oh, Deborah Polsky." I credit the hire of Deborah as a major step in being where we are today. Even through serious medical issues, personnel and board changes, and even a pandemic, Deborah has put her love of the DJHS into everything she does. And Deborah, I am so glad to also call you my friend. Thank you, Deborah, for putting up with me the past 6 years as board president. Absolutely. While Deborah certainly deserves a lot of the credit, she couldn't have done it without the support of an amazing staff. Jessica Schneider, our archivist, basically created our digital presence. From spearheading our digital categorization project to putting our oral histories on a more permanent and accessible web platform, managing our volunteer staff, and being our de facto webmaster, Jessica has literally brought the archive and our digital presence into the 21st century. She is the rock star performer, and I want to thank Jessica for all she has done in the few short years at the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. Jenny Clays is listed as the administrative assistant on our website, but her contributions and value to the organization far exceed this title. You could add graphic artist, content writer, office manager, systems analyst. This one-woman jack of all trades is the glue that holds the office together, even when the office is pandemically challenged and works from home. Jenny, your dedication and talent doesn't go unnoticed by anyone associated with the society. Thank you for all you do for us. All right. I also want to thank Melinda Collinger, Jeff Menkoff, and Allison Ray for being on the board this year. I hope you learned a lot about the organization and will continue to support and promote it. I also have a huge thank you to two long-term board members who are cycling off. Fonda Arbeiter has been a board member for several years and has been instrumental in planning bus tours and fundraising events. Fonda, in your own right, you are a recognized leader in the Dallas Jewish community, and we were thankful for your service to the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. Liz Leaner is also a longtime recognized leader in the Dallas Jewish community, and she has been an important member of the board and former executive board member of this organization. Thank you for your many years of service to the Dallas Jewish Historical Society and for your many years of friendship to me and my family. I also want to thank my current executive board of Joe Reingold, Ellen Ungerman, Rhonda Duchin, Chip Muchin, and Jeanette Pincus. I've known you all for many years, and I was fortunate to have such a talented team make this year one of the most successful terms in my 6 years as president. There are two others who I want to recognize who left this world way too soon. Deborah Konigsberg was the executive vice president of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society, who was always there when I needed her. Her voice of reason has been missed on the board the past 3 years, and I wouldn't be here today. In fact, none of us would be here today if it weren't for Jim Schwartz. Jim resurrected this organization 10 years ago and laid a new foundation for those that followed him. Jim, I thought about you every time I led a board meeting, hoping that some of your magic would rub off on me. Hopefully some of it did, and you're watching from above to see all that we have accomplished over the past decade. The Dallas Jewish Historical Society is a much different agency than it was 11 years ago. We are much better known throughout the greater Dallas Jewish community. We have over 15,000 artifacts in our archive, almost all of them digitally cataloged and searchable. We have almost 1,000 oral histories that can be accessed by anyone around the world at any time. We have had dozens of outstanding programs that are available to the community, ranging from culture and life cycle programming to sports-related personalities. We have become the go-to place for researching Dallas Jewish history and are working to incorporate genealogy into our offerings. We have a great team on our board and a new crop of great board members now coming on board who have decades of service and accomplishment to the Dallas Jewish community. I am excited for the future of this organization. Jeanette, one of the best decisions of my tenure was getting you on the board and quickly getting you on the exec board. Much of our success over the past 2 years has been because of you, and I am leaving the leadership of this organization in very good hands. I'm not going anywhere. I will be right behind you as Jim was to me, helping you guide the DJHS to the next level of service to the Dallas Jewish community. A final thank you to the staff and to the boards, past and present, for allowing me to lead this organization for the past 6 years. All right. So I'm going to do a quick de-installation and installation. So if you were a board member or officer this past year, if you could stand real quick. Thank you. All right. So by the power vested in me by the society, I hereby deinstall you from your respective office. Thank you for your service. I now want to introduce the new board and officers for this year, which we will install. That'd be President Jeanette Pincus, First Vice President Ellen Ungerman, Second Vice President Rhonda Duchin, Secretary Joe Reingold, Treasurer Chip Muchin, At-Large Mitch Myers, and myself as immediate past president. And Board members continuing on are Michael Cohen, Ruben Davidson, Dennis Eisenberg, David Goldman, Marilyn Paylett, Susan Shackman, Jan Schwartz, and Dorothy Walchansky. New board members, Melissa Ackerman, Roger Andrus, Stephanie Balin, Joey Music Daniel, Robin Donsky, Dina Fine, Jerry Finkelstein, Howard Freed, Mark Grishman, Hal Jason, Pam Pigeon, Jamie Pink, Laurie Prengler, Myra Prescott, Faith Bretsky, David Siegel, and Danielle Rugoff Singer. So the power vested in me, or soon to be, by the society, I hereby install you as the new officers and board of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. Congratulations. All right. Wait. Am I between you and dinner? Is that the deal? Okay. No.
Jokingly say that Stuart is president for life. And I think he felt that way many times, like no one was ever going to take this job after him. But he's done a yeoman's job of getting us through personnel changes, through tornado, pandemic. I can't even count the ways that he has really rallied his board and rallied the staff and helped everyone know how much they're appreciated. And on behalf of the board, I'd like to give you this little gift,
Thank you very much.
which you need to open.
Which I need to open.
Yeah, it's no fun if they don't open it.
All right. Hang on.
Hermetically sealed.
Numerically sealed. This is, oh, I know what this is. All right, Bucket box.
It is.
There we go. And it's engraved for your many years of dedicated and exemplary service to the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. So thank you very much, everybody. All right, thank you very much. All right, so what we're going to do now is we are going to turn this program over to Mitch Myers, who will introduce our program for tonight.
So, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Put it up to my mouth. Okay. Just a quick story. Stuart asked me to be on the board for about 4 years, and I finally said yes. So here I am. Well, my name is Mitch Myers. I'm on the board of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. So thanks for joining us for tonight's program, Women Talking Sports with Mark Elfenbein. So the idea of this program came about because we have 4 young ladies that are from the Dallas area and all Jewish and all in the sports related field. And Lakin Lippman, who's right there, she was the first person I thought about. And she not only played sports, she started becoming interested in sports, and she went to Alabama, went to Notre Dame, and she was doing all these great things. It was really a lot of fun. Then Jory Epstein, as you know, was doing great things. She was with the Dallas Cowboys. She was writing a book. I mean, she's personable, and so I thought, wow, this is great. This is really good. Then I was, one Saturday evening, I was getting ready to go out with my wife and do something I can't remember, but I'm listening to the radio, 105.3, and they're talking about the Cowboys and the Cardinals, and all of a sudden they introduce Danny Sarek. So Danny starts talking about why the Cardinals will probably beat the Cowboys because they're great on the road, and the Cowboys fell apart, and she was 100% right. So I thought, man, I got to get her on the program. She knows what she's talking about. And then Becca Jenikov, I knew she worked with Coffee Black up in New York with the Mets and the New York Knicks, and now she's with the Dallas Mavericks, and I think she has a selection, maybe a second-round pick that you're going to make tonight. Okay, sorry. So, however, there's one other thing I want to talk about briefly that Lakin brought to my attention many, many weeks ago which was the 50th anniversary of Title IX. Everybody heard of Title IX? Yeah. So I want to just make a quick point about that. So Title IX was not written with sports in mind. When President Richard Nixon signed the Education Amendments into law on June 23, 1972, 50 years ago today, the purpose of Title IX was to update Title VII, which was part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which banned forms of employment discrimination but not address educational discrimination. So that's pretty interesting. So I was reading the paper all week, the sports page, front page of the paper, and they were talking about Title IX and a lot about sports. It was a lot about sports. And Jody Conrad, who was an educator, she was the coach at the University of Texas basketball team, and she won a national championship at Texas. She's also the women's athletic director and a special advisor to the current AD, summed it up, Title IX, in one word, which was opportunity. Opportunity, she says, we think about it as being an opportunity in sports, but it's an opportunity in a lot of different areas that women can be whatever they want to be at this point in time and not feel like they are in a minority and not feel like they are visitors in their area of their pursuit. And all of that has happened, I think, as a result of Title IX, right? Which is great, and I'm happy that it is because we've got two young ladies here and one on the screen right there. So what I'd like to do now is introduce everybody. I'd like to introduce Lakin. She's going to join us. And yeah, give her some. Give him some. And Danny Sarek, who works with the Cardinals, and Becca Jenico, and my main Mark Elfenbein. So come on up and let's get it rolling.
Do I need a microphone? I do? Is this better? Oh, how are we doing? Hello, Tatalas, Bubalas, Zetas. I'm a Zeta. Well, pretty excited to be here. This is a really neat event, and as they were saying earlier, I had no idea this place existed. This is amazing. I mean, this is some kind of place. The secret's out. See, now I'm going to talk about you on Sunday. So, beautiful place and thrilled to be here. We have Lakin, and Lakin's in Colorado?
Yes, I'm in Denver.
Denver.
Sorry I can't be there. I'm so sad to miss it in person.
Okay, have you seen Russell Wilson yet?
No, but I'm wondering if he's going to be at the game that I'm covering on Saturday, so we'll see. I'm covering the U.S. Women's National Team. They're here this week.
Outstanding. All right, so Lakin Littman is there in Denver, and of course, to my right, to your left, or wherever you might be looking, I have Becca Jenikov. How are you?
Great.
See, this is weird. Okay.
Okay.
You hold that.
Okay.
I'm going to just, I wrote a few things down, so I'm going to get to those in a second. But first things first, and Lakin, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so one of my prerequisites, I'll just go back to doing this, it's easier, is on my Sunday show, I have to talk about bagels. Every Sunday, we have a bagel with a schmear. So ladies, I need to know your bagel of choice and what you want on it. Lakin, you start.
Oh, awesome. Now I really want a bagel. Everything bagel with plain cream cheese, lox, onions, and tomatoes.
Oh my God, we're going to the roof. All right, Danny Sarek, Arizona Cardinals, hit me with your bagel of choice and what's on it.
I'm similar, but a little simpler. Everything bagel with regular cream cheese and lox.
Okay, Becca.
Sesame bagel, double toasted with cream cheese.
Double toasted. I'm kind of the same. I'm going to go sesame, double toasted, schmear. I want a little slice of tomato, thin, and my lox, and I'm good. Okay, we got that out of the way. Are we good with that? All right, I just want to get my bagel talk out of the way. It was very important. Okay, you guys all came from the Dallas area, but I don't think people, they might know what you do now, but we want to know why you got started. So maybe Lakin, we can start with you, is what got you started in this drive to do what you do what you love, and continue to go on your spurt? And then we'll hop to Danny, and then we'll go to Becca.
Well, I started playing soccer, I think, when I was 3. My mom is in the crowd. She can attest to that. And I mean, my whole life and identity was being a soccer player up until through high school, really. And when I was, I think, 8 years old was the first time I ever went to a Texas OU game. And I'm a 3rd generation Longhorn and huge in my family, always watching football games. I naturally gravitated towards also watching football games and wanting to go to football games. And then just growing up in Dallas, obviously, when I was in 5th grade, the Dallas Stars won the Stanley Cup, and I went to a bunch of playoff games, and that was just, I don't know, I just really got interested. I guess I got the sports bug. And so I've just always really loved watching sports and playing sports. And I had this wonderful English teacher who really kind of helped me develop a passion for writing. And so when I was figuring out what I wanted to major in at UT, I kind of had this like weird epiphany one day. I was like, well, I really like sports. I like writing. Let me just combine them. And so my first, I think it was actually maybe during orientation at UT, I went to the Daily Texan office, the student newspaper there. I didn't write the student newspaper went to UT, which Becca also did. And my first time like ever writing for a newspaper, and I guess the rest is history. So now I'm really my freshman year of college, I've been a sports writer. And I currently write for Fox Sports.
Danny? Oh, switch.
Thank you. I grew up also playing sports, going to Cowboys, Stars games with my dad, and those were some of my like fondest memories growing up. And then as I got older, more into high school, and you start thinking about college and what you want to major in, I didn't really know what I wanted to major in. I just knew that I was not set out to be in a cubicle 9-to-5 classic job. And my junior year in high school, I had an English teacher who told me that she had put me up to apply for the school newspaper, because I went to a large school, so you had to be nominated and then apply. And I really enjoyed writing. However, I knew that I didn't want to be a writer, but that did open my eyes to journalism. And so I went to the University of Missouri and graduated with a broadcast journalism degree, and got a lot of experience working at a local newsroom and covering news and sports. And when I was covering sports, I realized that was what I wanted to do, just not in a typical newsroom setting. So when I graduated, my first job was with Fox Sports Southwest. I was an editor, associate producer, working mostly on Dallas Star shows, Texas Ranger shows, doing some high school football reporting as well, which was a lot of fun. And then that led me to the Dallas Cowboys, where I spent a little more than 3 seasons working as their team reporter and producer. And then since last September, I have been doing the same role out in Arizona for the Arizona Cardinals. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a journey to get here, but it's been fun.
Becca?
Wasn't, led to this job by a teacher. Like you guys were inspired or anything like that. I don't think my teachers like me that much. But in college, I had the opportunity to fill in for someone during a semester for the UT men's basketball team, and it kind of just fell into my lap. I said, I'll try it, I'll see what it's about. Turns out I loved it. So I kept working for them until the end of my junior year in college. And so ever since then, I kind of had it in my mind, like sports marketing. What is sports marketing? I didn't know. And so, I did some informational interviews and things like that. And I just kind of, was kind of honed in on sports. And I wasn't an athlete. I mean, I was a cheerleader and a dancer, but most, my brother says those aren't sports. So, but I, I was around a bunch of sports, understood sometimes how they went and all that kind of stuff. So I was definitely in the mix and was definitely, a fan. But when I graduated, I did an internship here at the American Airlines Center and kind of covered all their social media, all the concerts, things like that. So live social media coverage. And that's kind of where I found that I was pretty good at that. So after that, I moved to New York. I worked for the Mets, like Mitch said earlier, and for a year as a marketing associate, and just kind of, got my footing and, kind of learned the business inside and out and kind of paid my dues there. And then I had applied for a job at the Knicks, and I had gotten it, and then was kind of pushed up to a role for the Knicks social media team really quick when I got there. So I was there for 3 years, 3 seasons, traveled with the team, told their stories, and then was ready to come home to Dallas, and magically a job had opened up at the Mavericks. I just got lucky, and I applied and got the job, and I've been there ever since November 2019, and now I'm the social media manager there, and it is the best thing I've ever done. So just a little bit about my road to where I am now.
All right, so all of you have taken different roads, but similar roads. And I think we know with the anniversary of Title IX and the roads that have been paved and that continue to be paved, it might have been a little bit easier road now because these roads have been paved a little bit. Things are a little easier, but they're not easy. So my question to each of you, and you can tackle it one at a time, is what problems do female sports journalists, reporters, broadcasters who travel with the team, cover the team, what do you still face? Fire away.
I'll start.
Okay. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm not a journalist, but the team sometimes will see you as a media person, so I do understand, what that feels like. Sometimes it's not great, but as a woman in general, you have to be a little more aggressive, and you have to be like, not in like a bad sense, but you got to, speak up and, kind of make your place where you are, because I think, especially for me, at least personally, traveling and things like that, I experienced a lot of like loneliness, because like all the men get together and go for drinks and they go for dinner, and you're the only girl on the plane, so you just sit in your room all night and you don't really have much to do. So I've experienced that, and it's also just kind of like clicky, like clicks and so you kind of have to establish yourself and speak up and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm
gonna stay with it.
Yeah.
Once you did that, because, I mean, obviously, the Mavericks are a pretty tight-knit group, and things went a lot better this year. As the season went along and winning became a little bit more habit-forming, did it get better?
I was talking about when I was with the Knicks. Now, when I'm with the Mavs, there's a woman photographer. I have a woman coordinator. Our CEO is a woman. My big boss is a woman. So it's a totally different world. But yes, I have experienced the loneliness and the clickiness. I still do, but like not as much. So the Mavs are doing it right.
Lakin, yourself?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin. I guess I can start with being the only female reporter in press box after press box, having to intervene, and mostly I cover college football, so that's covering a lot of men. And I'm 33, but I look younger, which is great. But when you're interviewing older men, they, especially, you know, these $1 million coaches, you kind of feel like you have to prove yourself, that you have the knowledge of the sport that they coach and play. And so I've always really had to work hard at forming questions so that, you know, I sound like I know what I'm talking about, which really isn't fair because I'm sure my male colleagues do not think as hard as I do about the way to word certain questions. You know, there'll be times where I'll be the only woman in a press conference, and, you know, I'm better at it now, given that I've been doing this for a while, but especially early on in my career, like having the courage and confidence to like raise my hand and ask a question. And I've covered some pretty high profile teams, and those press conferences will be broadcast live on ESPN. I was like, I guess my family likes to say that I was famously yelled at by Brian Kelly while I was covering Notre Dame, and that was on ESPN. So that was really fun. And also just kind of as Becca was talking about, covering college football, it's mostly male dominated, as our whole profession is. But, you know, when you're on the road, it can be really cliquey for sure. Covering the Alabama beat, I was the only woman. Covering Notre Dame beat, I was the only woman. When you're traveling on the road, especially, you have to kind of befriend these older men and be like, can you walk me to my car after the game so that I'm not walking to a parking lot by myself? These are just things, you know, that like as women, we have to do that our male counterparts don't have to do or even think about. And especially when you're younger, it's hard to ask people to wait for you. And so anyway, it's just kind of like a never ending thing. Even now, like I just felt kind of like I had, when I was working on the book and I wasn't covering sports, and especially pandemic, when there were a lot of in-person interviews or press conferences, or you couldn't even go to games, I kind of thought, okay, well, maybe now that I'm back in the press box, there will be more women, and there just aren't. And I'm so thankful for the women who came before me and had it much worse, going into locker rooms and, you know, having men treat them, you know, really badly. I don't feel that quite as much thanks to them. But it's also hard. Like I've had, you know, walking into a boss's office and asking for a raise, you know, I've seen that my male counterparts make more than me. I do just as good of a job, and, you know, they don't give me raises, but they give them raises and job title changes. And, you know, it's one of those things where sometimes I ask myself, like, why do I keep doing this? But it's like, I love sports writing and I don't know what else I would want to do. So, you know, I think it's important that, you know, the women stick together and keep at it.
Danny, you've been very good, Lakin. Thank you. All right, you've been here, then Fox. Now you're with the Cardinals. Your take on this whole situation? How's it been?
Yeah, for me, I think going off what Lakin and Becca have also said is, I think early on, whenever I have started a new job, covering a new team is just establishing my knowledge and working a little harder, that I'm not just there to check a box as hiring a woman, and that I'm there because I know what I'm talking about. And that if you're listening to a podcast or if you're watching an interview, it's not because I'm a woman, it's because I know what I'm talking about. For me, the way that the NFL coverage works is you're in the locker room for media coverage throughout the week, after games, and that is probably where I feel the biggest discrepancy, is just constantly having your head on a swivel of making sure that you are being even more professional than everybody else. Little things where if a player is only dressed from the bottom down, I won't approach him to ask him a question until they put a shirt on or a male goes up to them first. Not only to make sure they're comfortable, but also you don't want to give the wrong impression, which is something that the male counterparts don't even think about. When getting a player's contact.
I will add, she's absolutely right. I mean, I've been in the I've been in locker rooms my whole life. We don't even blink. We don't have to blink. We're guys.
I'm sure.
We've been in there our whole lives. And the ladies, you have to watch your P's and Q's, not only if you just started, if you've been doing it for 35 years, it doesn't matter.
and I'm sure Becca too, especially with and Lagan, but getting players' phone numbers for content purposes is making clearer of boundaries and thinking about the wording and the timing you're texting players to set things up. It's a lot of things where we might have similar opportunities as male counterparts, but there's a lot more thinking that goes involved as you're doing your job around them. I also thankfully have a lot of women in the company that I work for now in higher up positions as well, which is really great. I haven't felt anything that's made me feel uncomfortable in my job now, but it is interesting. I am usually the only woman out at practice or in the pressers. There's maybe one other who covers multiple teams and is on rotation. So you almost have to, carry a little bit of pride and almost feel like you're defending other women covering sports by showing your knowledge, and you're not just there, to check a box for having a woman in the area.
Can I add a
sorry,
quick
and-
story really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, something Danny said just reminded me of the story. When I was covering Notre Dame, a lot of times the media gets to go watch practice, especially we get like a lot, I don't do that job anymore, but media gets a lot of access for spring football. And like, I've been around, like people definitely know like who I am, that I'm a familiar face. And so there was one practice in particular where I'm, walking to where like the media is all standing, and this Notre Dame security guard, was older man, stops me and says, "Are you supposed to be here?" And I don't know, I had been kind of a little irritated by some other things, I think, that day. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a reporter." And he was like, "Well, where's your ID?" And I was like, "Well, we don't have to bring IDs. I don't have a credential with me." And then he was just kind of giving me some problems. And I turned to him and I was like, "Did you ask any other man this question?" And that shut him up, and I just walked to my spot. But like, it's just so annoying that I even have to have a story like that. And I'm sure Becca and Danny have stories like that too.
No, when you said like the press room or the media room, I mean, where I sit even for the Mavs games, I mean, he sits right behind me. So like I'm one of two girls up there, I think. And then, in media rooms around the country in different stadiums or arenas, the women are expected to be quiet, like in the media room. If you're talking, like someone will just turn around and be like, "Shut up," like to a girl, instead of, and they won't act that way really towards their male counterparts. So I usually try to stay out of there because I will cry. And then, no doubt. Yes, there is. There is. And also, just, when you're walking on the court, and I have, like Lakin said, like you have a credential, I have a vest on, I have all the things, and I'm still just, pushed out of the way and, all that kind of stuff. So it's just stuff that we have to deal with. I think it gives you a thicker skin, for sure. But it's something that more work needs to be done with that. So.
I think something too is, at least for me, I spend a lot of my time in front of the camera for my job. And so that brings a whole new, of fans, superiors who I've worked for on what I've been wearing, what my hair has looked like, makeup. And it's not a knock on the men, but they could wear the same suit 5 days in a row on TV and nobody would notice. And it's little things like that of having to look a certain way, and again, not push any boundaries, but still look a certain way that the audience would want to see, but being true to yourself and, still obviously being appropriate. It's a lot of juggling, and a lot of thought goes into every outfit or everything I wear. And then sometimes a lot of control to not look at the comments.
All right, I got 2 follow-ups. Are we having fun yet? Okay, because I'm having a great time. We're going to let this go longer, so. And we'll give you the Mavericks draft pick when it happens, so relax. All right, so Lakin, I have a question for you, and then I'm going to follow up with the 3 of you. When you were talking about Alabama and you're the only woman out there, what's it like when you go cover the women's soccer team? How are you treated when you go to that? That's a good question.
It's the best. Covering women's sports is literally like a breath of fresh air, especially soccer, because I played, and like I'm, like low key super jealous that like they're playing professional soccer and I didn't make it that far. But it's just so much more relaxed. Like a lot of times when I'm covering like football, like whether it's college football, NFL, NBA, college basketball, whatever. These guys are so much taller than me, so much bigger than me. And, you know, it's like I look different than everyone else who's coming to talk to them. And I've noticed, you know, when I'm covering the women's national team or, you know, even any other women's sport, WNBA, whatever, like they see me and I feel like they're also relieved that they now get to talk to a woman reporter, because like, so it's really funny. I feel like I take such care in, like I said before, like wording my questions for male athletes, and it's so much easier with women. But I feel like a lot of my male counterparts do not like take that same care in how they word questions to female athletes, because they'll ask questions sometimes and I'm just like, you can tell that she did not like that question, and like she doesn't really get what you're trying to, you know, ask. But yeah, no, like in general, it's just so, I personally just feel like way more at ease when I'm covering women.
Because of COVID, the last, 2-3 years, the locker rooms were shut down for all of us. And that was a big adjustment because no more talking to players. Then they would bring one of them out to a video camera and you have to sit in a room and take turns, right? And then the question became to everybody in the industry, when COVID starts to go away, are we ever going to be able to go back in the locker rooms again? And I don't know if that's been answered yet. Have you guys talked about that at all?
NFL has started opening up locker rooms. Not every team, but I know that at least the Dallas Cowboys have. So at least NFL has the option to start opening those up again.
I don't believe so.
For the Mavericks.
Right. Or NBA.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't know. I mean, like in college sports, you don't get locker room access unless you're covering like the college football playoff or the national championship. But I've read that, you know, a lot of these leagues kind of liked not having locker room access, and they might want to keep it that way, which is just disservice because we get so much out of those locker room, that locker room access. So I really hope that that they don't go back all these years before there was ever locker room access to begin with.
Anniversary of Title IX, 50 years. What does it mean to you and how has it affected you in what you do today? Any one of you can start.
I can't go first on this one. Thank you. Oh, now it might be working. At least for me, I think it's a blessing that while I have felt at times I've had to work harder to get to where I am, I haven't had any massive obstacles that have prevented me from getting a job. And I think that just comes from years of women before me fighting that fight. Now when you turn on TV and you're watching any major network on SportsCenter, ESPN, NFL Network, MLB Network, lots of women, and again, knowledgeable women. And it's because of women like that, women who hold higher positions for the teams and leagues that we cover and work for, that it's been a blessing that in the grand scheme of things, I feel like I haven't had to have any of those major fights that they did because of the years that they've been doing that, which has been a blessing. And I guess thinking about it, like you would hope that it hasn't really crossed my mind up until this moment, but maybe we're doing some of that same work for younger women and girls in the future as well.
Lakin?
It's funny because like covering sports and covering women's sports, I never really thought about like, oh, Title IX also impacted me. Like, I just kind of felt like, oh, I'm covering all these athletes and coaches who like experience this and like are directly reaping the benefits. But like, I was actually talking to someone else about this, like how I obviously am a product of Title IX. Like I was 10 years old when the women's soccer team won the World Cup in 1999. And like, I was obviously playing soccer and we've discussed this, huge Mia Hamm fan. And, now I cover the team. And then of course, getting into sports, like Danny alluded to, there were so many women sports writers that came before me that I didn't even know about. Like getting into sports writing wasn't even like a question because they had already laid the groundwork for someone like me to step into that profession. Obviously, like, there's definitely obstacles and, tough moments like we were talking about before, but just the fact that there were all of those women who had gone into locker rooms and challenged male coaches before me, obviously helped make my life a little bit easier.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what you guys are saying, I mean, honestly, my job is a little newer, like emerging media. So there haven't been a ton of people in front of me doing what I'm doing because it's always like evolving. But one of my favorite things to know in the back of my brain when like people are replying to the Mavericks tweets or anything like that is that they don't know a girl is running this account. And it would crush them if they did. And so, like, I like to keep that, to myself, obviously. But it's insane. If you look at all the pro teams, I can tell you that there's probably more girls on their social team than boys or men, because girls kind of are more, gravitate towards it more, but they educate themselves like we talked about, and we establish ourselves in that role. So players and coaches, and I get calls all the time helping coaches with the smallest things, and the fact that they come to me and not somebody else is huge for me, because it just takes one little favor for someone and you're their world after that. So especially when, it's a nice smiling face and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's there aren't many people before me that have done it. I mean, I've always had male bosses. I still do. But there's no, like, I think like a majority of the social media managers out there are women.
So I'm curious about this from all three of you, because myself, we all had, I don't know, idols people would looked up to. I mean, I was Howard Cosell, Dick Enberg, Kurt Gowdy, all these broadcasters, and I'm like, man, that's what I'm going to be right there. But you guys, I'm curious who yours were, because again, there weren't many women doing what you're doing today. And I think, Danny, you said it, because you turn on the TV today, play-by-play women, color analyst women, studio hosts, sideline reporters.
They're making history tonight at the NBA draft.
Yes, I mean, it's everywhere. So I know I had my guys. Who did you guys have? Who did you look up to that, or was it an epiphany? Do you like that word? Epiphany?
I think, oh my gosh, is it me? It just works. Interesting enough, growing up playing soccer, Mia Hamm was, I guess, the first female role model I had. I remember similarly my dad taking my sisters and our friends, we were all playing soccer growing up, to watch the women's national team. Maybe I don't need one. Okay. And just seeing them play soccer as a little girl playing soccer, that was kind of when you realize, oh, like I can do that. Like if I wanted to, like that's really cool. And then I think throughout middle school and high school, like SportsCenter, ESPN, it was Sage Steele who was really on everything, very knowledgeable on a whole scale of sports and teams. And then as I started to get a little more specific into football, really respect the work ethic and the talent of Laura Rutledge and SEC Network, covering college football, now at ESPN and covering NFL. And the way during the football season, she just goes back and forth of NFL and college, and the grind that she puts in is something that I really respect.
Lakin, go ahead.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, because I really didn't figure out what I wanted to do with my career until towards the end of high school, it's like I can't really confidently say that I looked up to a bunch of writers growing up. But once I decided this is what I want to do, I would seek them out just to read, not and hope one day meet them. But I would say, like, I've been very fortunate enough that, like, one of my greatest mentors is one of the greatest, I think, not just female writers, but sports journalists of all time, which is Christine Brennan, and I got to work with her when I was at USA Today, and I know that Jory gets to work with her now. Well, and also just like Sally Jenkins at the Washington Post. These are women who are covering everything that I would ever want to cover and writing it better than anybody. And I mean, of course, like there are plenty of male writers that I think are amazing and that I read, and I try to emulate sometimes like the way that they ask questions or write columns. But I feel very lucky that there are so many that I get to look up to and that I've looked up for a while, like Kristen Brennan, Sally Jenkins, Nancy Armour. They are, just incredible role models as far as sports journalism goes.
I mean, again, my job's a little newer, so I don't really, social media wasn't really a thing when I was, 5. No, there wasn't like someone I looked up to, like an influencer or something, but, so I don't really have like someone that I looked up to, but to turn the question on its head, the work ethic and like the work ethic that it takes to do our job, and also like the stability and the reassurance that we as women don't have to give up anything for our job and do our job. And like, I mean, that came from my mom because she's a boss lady. So, my like drive and she'll be working on her computer while watching TV, and we're in the, living room. I do the same thing like every single night. So, that's who I can only say that I wouldn't be, in the position I am if I didn't fight for what I wanted and what I felt like I deserved, because I saw it happen in front of me.
So we heard Mitch, that guy right there, he mentioned opportunity, which is a big reason this is what it's happening in the industry. It's finally getting opportunities. There are some that still do not, but the point is that you got to keep fighting for it. I guess my question is as we're talking about growth, being able to cover the Cardinals and the Mavericks and the United States women's soccer team and football and whatever the three of you get to do, and we've seen areas of play-by-play and sideline reporters and on and on and on. What needs to be next? What are they missing? Where do you want to see a change? I mean, it's getting better, but what are the things that need to change?
I can go first on this one because answer quickly popped in my head. I'm not sure an answer on a national or global scale, and not necessarily from personal experience on this specific example, but from what I've seen is, women taking maternity leave and bringing in replacements, and or just in general I've experienced a lot of situations at previous employers where I feel like as women, we are pinned up against each other. It's more of, well, we have a few women, but we don't want more, so we only have a few opportunities, so we're just gonna, put them against each other and, one person wins essentially. We only have this many seats at the table as opposed to bringing more seats or adding more tables. So from my experiences, I would say it's probably just not limiting women in industries or a specific team or anything like that, and just making it more equal between the women, as opposed to creating competition and feeling like there's only a limited number of spaces for us.
Lakin?
Well, the U.S. women just finally achieved equal pay, which is amazing. So we need that too. Like, I am 100% confident that my male counterparts have always made more than me. And there have been so many times where I've pitched the same story, been told no, then see my male colleague go out and do it. And I'm just like, okay, well, I also pitched that. I think it's obviously being treated equally, getting paid equally or more. And also just having more women out there. I remember in college, there were some professors who, not because I was a woman, just because journalism is such a difficult and tough industry, kind of discouraging, oh, well, you might start in Victoria, Texas. And I'm like, I am not starting there. And I didn't because I was determined not to. But it's kind of just despite how difficult and sometimes really just kind of like the overall negativity surrounding the state of our profession, just really encouraging young women to keep at it and get into it. And there's so many new types of jobs. Like obviously what Becca does was not definitely, I mean, I'm not that much older than Becca, and that job did not exist when I graduated college. So it's just like encouraging more, I think, young women to get into these jobs so that we aren't the only ones at press conferences and press boxes.
For sure. And I think in addition to all of that, and what I thought you were going to go into, but it sparked something for me, is also like pitting women against each other within the same company. I think that's also something. I've had bosses who have been women that only favor men, and it's just insane to see other women tearing other women down in like the company. I still see it today. You know, it's competition, it's jealousy, it's the fact that it all starts there, where there should only be one woman, so that woman has to be the woman. And like, so, you know, it's instead of you know, being a friend or, you know, someone that they can be there for, you're afraid of them. And so that exists. It exists everywhere. So I definitely think that stigma as well needs to be squashed.
Very well done. All right, a couple of bullet points here, and then just we'll hop around to some other things. Just curious, me, and maybe some of them, PGA Tour versus the Live Tour. Your thoughts?
Oh, I'll start. I said this to my dad the other day. I said, we all know that it's all about money, right? We all know. We saw the numbers in the media, and then all of a sudden they started going, and I just think it's all tainted, kind of, because if they're all going over there, it's all about the cash, right?
It is, so far.
I mean, 9 figures or whatever. I mean, anybody would do that unless they were loyal.
I'm going to wait for the other two girls, Lakin and Deanie, if you got a take on this.
I don't have a hot enough take to share. My dad's in the audience, who's a big golfer, so I feel like if I said anything too uneducated, he would be a little embarrassed. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass on this one.
Yeah,
Aiken?
I'm not a golf fan either, but like Becca said, obviously it's about all the money. Like Phil Mickelson was asked, what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago, what he would say to families who lost loved ones on 9/11, and he didn't even like answer the question. It's just like, it's hard to wrap your head around, for sure.
If my father was here, he would say it's all fakakta. It's all fakakta. But what I will say, I don't know how long it lasts. It just depends on how much money they have. But this is kind of like the USFL back in the day. All the big name players were leaving the NFL and running to the USFL to take the money and starting this new league. And it lasted for as long as they had money. And then when the money ran out, they said, you know what, I can go play in the NFL again. So get ready for the Live to hang around for a while until the oil well dries up or whatever it might be. And we'll see what happens. All right, let's go back to serious questions. Ready? That was just for fun. How do you feel about transgender athletes entering the world of women's sports, specifically the swimming situation, Olympics, and what have you? Thoughts on that? Go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
I mean, we all have our, that's, you're like trapping people if they say something differently than what we're all going to say, which is that we support it because,
Oh, I'm
I mean,
I just thought it was a great question.
it's a great question, but, you know, I think, and we also don't have a say really because it's not our profession and it's not our, you know, business either, but like, I have no problem with it whatsoever. Yeah. No feelings. I totally feel great about it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't necessarily want to speak on behalf of a community I'm not a part of, but do support. And I think as we've sat here and talked about the women who have come before us in the fight, they've had to fight. They didn't do it alone. And I think that's really important when talking about support for a community you might not yourself fit in, but if you're an ally, is being supportive.
Yeah, I echo what you guys said too. It's really hard to speak on this topic when it doesn't like directly affect you and you can't relate on such a personal level because you want to be accepting of all types of people and communities and the kinds of things that they're going through. But it's it's obviously a very interesting topic for debate, and it's very tricky, I think.
Well done, ladies. They handled that very nicely. All right, so here's another, I don't know if it's a touchy subject, but it's something we're all dealing with now. And whether we saw it in our work or not, we may have seen it, but we didn't focus on it. It's now what we're seeing more of, the mental health and depression with athletes from high school to college, all the way to the pros. And even, Kevin Love came out and speaking about it, and other guys are coming out and speaking. Is it something that you have seen? Is something in your work that you've heard about? Is it something in your work that they've said, hey, stay away from that? I mean, how has that affected your work?
I know at least.
I think.
Go ahead, Lincoln. No, you go ahead.
Okay, I think it's made because of such big time athletes like Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka speaking so confidently and honestly about the struggles that they've had with mental health. And that's kind of, I think, given athletes permission to be honest with us when we ask them questions and talking about how they see therapists and how they had to step away from the game because this or that was happening. And I think it's really important for athletes to speak up about this topic, just because it helps other people, whether they're athletes or not athletes, or maybe even reporters, know that it's okay to have those problems, and that people won't, unless you've got you always got the trolls out there who are going to judge you and say mean things. But for the most part, it makes people maybe like those athletes even more, and also just generally there's now more of a general acceptance, I think, for just talking about mental health.
Mental health is not new to athletes. I think it's just been the strength and bravery of those first few athletes having that open dialogue that has opened this for everyone. Just the way, the three of us, even as great examples, talk about as kids, role models we had of sports we played growing up. These little kids are now seeing their athletes, these people they idolize, that, oh, just because I feel this way doesn't, I can work through it. I know resources I can look at or people I can talk to. And I think that athletes are expected to be perfect, and their lives should be perfect because they are playing a sport they've loved their whole lives, and they're making a ton of money, and they have all this notoriety. And in reality, they're still people, and they're getting trolled on social media for missing a shot or anything really at this point. And I just think it's been really great to see those athletes remind people that they're people, and have a lot of these same struggles that everybody else has. I know at least in the NFL, they offer workshops, and they have throughout the year as employees and the players and coaching staff, everybody has access to resources and information and people to talk to as well, which has been really great.
Yes, as an employee that, flies with the players, travels with them, I'm around them a ton. I've seen a couple of players, be absent and eventually get waived, or even, the younger guys at Summer League that we take to Vegas and things like that are emotional and things like that. I resonate with them as someone that deals with anxiety. I definitely know, how that feels, not at that level, but definitely at some level. But it also it makes me want to tell their stories too, just as much, because I have that. You guys have that power to tell the story. I have that power to tell the story a little more visually, but they're always, or not always, but they have been more open to sharing those stories with us and letting us tell them and be a part of it. So it's actually been a really beautiful thing that I've gotten to actually tell those stories and actually share with players, my struggles too, and, coping mechanisms and things like that. So
The social media of today is dominant, scary. How much we rely on it, look at it every 30 seconds. Maybe that's too long, maybe every 6 seconds. But how has it helped your job? And what do you have to be careful of? Because now we got to really be careful. I mean, Herman Edwards said it, don't hit send. Don't hit send. Because be careful what you tweet or whatever. Do you find that? A, how's it helped you, and how do you have to watch yourself?
how much time do you have? So, no, they're not. Well, for me personally, being a social media manager, I have a couple of people underneath me, so I try to train them to think, what would Mark Cuban say about this tweet? What would St. Marshall think about this tweet? What is our intention? Why are we posting it? Lots of questions before you press send or before you even put a post together at all. There's a lot of teams out there that will just fire away and say whatever they want, and they get in a lot of trouble for that, but until they're caught. But, personally, as a social media manager for the Mavericks, we hold ourselves to a standard. So we ask ourselves those questions before we hit send. That means there's preparation weeks in advance, months in advance for a single post. So it's very, very intricate and very lots of attention to detail.
Personally, social media has really helped people like me, reporters. It's just another way for content to be seen by a different demographic than people who aren't watching your local stations of the sports shows that we have, or going to the website, things like YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Not only posting content, but being able to interact with fans, questions they might have, or just wanting to get to know you, which can also kind of be a little scary. While it's great and it's important, I'm much more of a private person personally, so I kind of have to go back and forth on wanting to be personable and have an image that is approachable and still professional on social media without giving away too much, whether that's, what's going on in the picture, who I'm with in the picture. I, over the last couple of years specifically, have been a lot more intentional about posting pictures of my family, not posting locations of where I am. It played a heavy role when I had I had about 2 weeks to move from Dallas to Arizona, because I moved during the season, of working with my dad on finding apartments of safety measures. Things that, again, a lot of male counterparts probably don't think about, but getting home from work at 1, 2, 2:30 in the morning, things that you have to think about because people know you much more than you think they do, or they think they know you pretty well as well.
I have two comments. The first is a story of how social media has helped me. I was covering Alabama. I was 23, 24, and didn't have like a big social media following at that point. And Alabama had just opened up its brand new, I don't know if it's like $13 million weight room, indoor football complex. It's amazing. And so there was one day where they're like, okay, let's bring all the reporters and give them a tour. And so we're walking around, and there's like this little health bar, where they can get like bars and smoothies. And it's like the nutrition area. And there's a huge sign on the wall in big letters. And it said, "Sweat is just your fat crying." And I thought that was hilarious. And so I took a picture of it and I tweeted it, and it went like, someone bigger than me must have seen it, tweeted it, and then it, took on a life of its own. One of the people that saw it was my now former boss at USA Today. She was the sports managing editor, and literally that tweet helped me get a job at USA Today. because I had met her, and so she had followed me and she had seen it, and she was like, that's the kind of content that we're looking for, and it led to a job, which was amazing. That same editor, once I got, the job, like later the joke in the office was like, never tweet, because you see so many reporters and athletes, tweeting things. You're like, ooh, probably shouldn't have said that. And it can backfire so quickly. And I am always somebody who just like, it's very hard for me. Like that was like a kind of like an out of character moment to see something and tweet it immediately, because now I feel like I mean, every time I have a tweet, I take a picture of it and send it to my husband and ask him, like, does this sound okay? Like, I'm so like, you see people tweet things that they shouldn't all the time. And I'm very conscious of the fact that I don't want to be like a story because I, mistweeted or something. And I'm not a huge Twitter person. I really am not. Like, I really don't like it, mainly because of all the trolls out there. I love Instagram, but mine's private. Like, I don't really use it for work. And I mean, I know it comes with the territory of the job, social media, and but I'm just not a huge fan. But the first story is obviously how it can be used to our advantage.
Okay, that's good, because, yeah, there are trolls out there, and that's the thing you have to fight, because somebody will tweet you something, go, okay, look, I can rip you a new one, and you go, but if I do, then it's going to start a whole, you know what, so we're not going to mess with that. Are there any questions from the audience? I have somebody in the back. That's the RHR guy. See, I know what that means. Oh, what are the odds that the microphone works? Hold on, Tatala. Wait a second. We're getting you a microphone. We want to hear what he has to say. I bet you this one works and that one doesn't.
Thank you. Excuse me. What long-term effect, or even short-term effect, and this is primarily for college athletics, will the NIL and the transfer portal do to change the face of college athletics? Because I have the personal feeling that it's going to be like professional athletics, that the good players are going to where the money is. And those colleges that have the big boosters are going to thrive, and a lot of the others will disappear, basically.
See College Station.
Yeah, right.
Y'all go for it.
What'd you say?
You go for it. I don't know much.
I mean, it's totally changing the landscape of college sports. It's really, there's just no federal legislation yet. So it's really the wild, wild west. And literally up until they're told they can, all of these now what they're calling collectives, basically all the big money boosters at every single school are coming together and just donating money so that they can get all of the best players. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you saw that Texas got a huge commitment today from Arch Manning, Peyton Manning and Eli Manning's nephew. And while we want to think that like, oh, wow, this was so great that Steve Sarkisian recruited him and he wants to come and, bring Texas back. It's like the logical question is, okay, how much money is he getting paid? What kind of NIL deals is he being offered at Texas that Georgia and Alabama somehow aren't offering? And, there's this player, he's a junior in high school right now, and he was offered $8 million to go play at Tennessee. He hasn't even been to campus yet and tried out for the starting job. He could be a total bust. It's just crazy what people are willing to spend their money on these days. So it's totally changing college sports.
Okay. I have a question you have a question. Okay, well, fire away. Oh, the microphone is back right here. She doesn't need one. Go ahead.
Okay. Being female is fantastic, but what has not been touched on yet, have you had any anti-Semitic type of incidents at all?
At work? No. I have been lucky enough to work with, in every one of my stops, have had a tribe member at the very top and or on my level and working on my team. And even now my boss's boss is Jewish, and she makes it a priority, and she's probably watching right now too, because I gave her the link. But yeah, she empowers me, and I've never encountered it.
Danny?
No, same as you. As I thankfully haven't experienced any of that in the workplace. I think the only thing that's I've really had to adjust is especially when when I've been new to jobs and it's the start of football season, it's the high holy day. So it's not as easy as some people might think to just take off work on a game day. There's not necessarily a plethora of people who can do all of the jobs that you can do, which makes it a personal, sometimes tough decision of working or not working. But thankfully, everyone that I have worked for or with has been really accommodating.
No, I thankfully have not experienced any anti-Semitism. It's definitely more just struggling, or when I do have like issues, it's because I'm a woman.
I have a question for Danny that maybe we can all comment on. How excited are you about Hard Knocks with the Cardinals? HBO.
Yeah, I coincidentally had a little bit of experience with Hard Knocks last year when they covered the Cowboys, but that was during training camp. So this will be a little different because it'll be during the season starting week 8. Should be fun, should be interesting. Some of our players will be back by week 8, which is good. One player in particular, so that's really wonderful. Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm kind of hoping to stay behind the scenes and observe how it all gets done, but it'll definitely be a nice look inside behind the scenes.
I need to know 3 players we need to watch. Tell me 3. Come on. On Hard Knocks, who's going to be the 3 guys that are going to stand out? Besides Kingsbury and his palace.
Okay. Probably on defense, I'd probably have to say, J.J. Watt and probably linebacker Isaiah Simmons going into a big year, taking a big leap, a lot of personality, very fun. On offense, of course, Kyler Murray. I think a lot on Hollywood Brown, just stepping in for DeAndre Hopkins. He's really, really nice and he's new, and so I think they're going to follow that storyline. But again, by week 8, DeAndre Hopkins will be back and coming off a suspension, so I'm sure a lot of cameras will be on him as well.
Very good. I think at this time I would like, oh, you have a question from the audience. I know her. I have all your albums. Go.
Okay, y'all are in a job where there's tons of men, obviously, that we've been talking about it a lot, but how does that affect your social life? Can you have a social life? You travel all the time, you're with all these people late nights, like how do you be able to have your own life?
I'll start. I have no oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, it is a give and take. You know, like it's all about work-life balance, and I think for me, I didn't have a life for a long time. Work was my life, in New York especially, and I think I learned from the people that made that a priority for me. Work is life, basically. I learned that when I was a manager, I was not going to be that way. So, you know, having help and accepting help is something I think we all struggle with in general, and saying we need help and things like that. So, you know, building a team, at least for me, has helped that. And it's still hard to, you know, let go of and things, but it's allowed me to, during the off season at least, be able to be more social and things like that. And really during the season, it depends on how you feel. Like you have to zone into your feelings a lot and say, do I have enough energy to, you know, talk to people tonight after the game? Do I have enough energy to go, you know, fly to a wedding and then come back the next day? Like that happens to me. You've seen that a million times, and it's either yes or the answer is yes or no. It's just about how you feel. And I know a lot of people, at least in my job, I know maybe in your jobs too, we all talk about, me and my counterparts at other teams talk about mental health a lot because, you know, it really takes a toll, and you have a community right there for you as well. And, you know, some of the things that I've done, like going to a wedding, skipping a playoff game, things like that, have been I've been persuaded, but also like, inspired by other people in my job that have done the same. So I know it's okay to do that, even though I was told that it wasn't okay. But now I impart that wisdom on others.
Yeah, I think early on in my career, I wasn't as great about that because you have this job and you're young and you don't want them to think that you're not taking it seriously or it's not a priority. And I would miss a couple of weddings or family functions. And now it's the same of finding that balance of working through Friday, coming in very late Friday night, going to a wedding Saturday, and then on 2 hours of sleep, hair and makeup on the plane right to the stadium because it was just that important to still have that personal part of your life in the week because I know that we all work a ton with what we cover, but at least for me, from July to, hopefully end of February, I'm working either 6 or at least 13 days in a row because if it's a home game, that's 6 with hopefully Saturday off. And if you travel, you're traveling on that Saturday. So it gets very tough and very draining to almost do anything like by the end of the day because a lot of times too, it's not 9 to 5, it's practices at 8:30. So you're there by 7:30, 8. You're not leaving till 6:30, 7. So it's been a lot harder to find that work-life balance, but at least the further I get in my career, the more a priority I put on that because it comes with the territory. Like, love my job and how unique it is and the experiences I get to have, but there are a lot of sacrifices that you have to make to get to this point and to find that work-life balance.
Yeah, I would echo all of that, especially, yeah, like you said, Danny, early on in my career, I missed college friends' wedding. Huge, that like doesn't get much bigger than that. But yeah, I mean, I've missed, family functions. This weekend I'm missing a family bar mitzvah because I'm, working in Denver, which I'm so happy to be doing this job, but, it stinks that I can't, be with my family. And, I've missed holidays, family functions. I'm hopefully going to the Men's World Cup in November, which means I'll miss Thanksgiving. There's just so many different things, but this is we enjoy doing it. And so these are kind of the decisions that we make. So, but yeah, it's definitely hard. It helps now, I will say. I've ever since graduating in 2011 from UT, I've, lived in so many different cities. So my social life has definitely gotten better now that I live in Dallas.
Well, before I hand it over to Mitchell, all right. Should I take one more question? No, they said go ahead. One more question. We like you. Go ahead.
Is there a particular coach who has had a positive influence on your professional life?
My father? Oh.
I was just about to say the same thing. Why are you doing that?
That's who I thought of.
My dad. I already talked about my mom, so it's only fair.
Not just because he's in the room, but I'd probably have to say the same as well. My dad was my soccer coach for many years and is one of the few people, you touched on it, of you get home from work and you don't want to talk about sports anymore that you do. And he's probably the only person that I'm willing to, when I was living at home, come home after talking about football for 6 or 7 hours, talk about the same things for another hour with my dad. So I'll go with my dad.
Hi, Grandpa Bud. I know what he's angling at here. But first, I will also say my dad. He coached me through soccer and everything. But the answer that I know Grandpa Bud is looking for is when I covered Nick Saban at Alabama. He really, he doesn't know it because he doesn't know me well or anything. But he, as I was talking about earlier about making sure that I have, I word my questions correctly. He will literally stare you down if he doesn't like the way that you phrased a question. So that was a really important and very intimidating coach to early on in my career, but he definitely helped me now looking back at how I ask questions.
So I want to, hi, yes. It's all right. This is your show, not mine.
Can we give Lakin a moment to talk about her book?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to do that. See, Lakin, how you doing? Tell us about this book that we can all go buy.
Well, I don't have one to show here, but I know my mom sent me pictures that you guys have them there, which is amazing. So thank you. So I wrote this book called Strong Like a Woman. I wrote it, I was assigned to write it by Sports Illustrated, my former employer, in conjunction with Rizzoli Publishing. And it's 100 essays about the 100 greatest female athletes. And it was published in April, but the point of it, of course, was to celebrate these women in conjunction with the 50th anniversary of Title IX, which is today. So, I love the response that it's gotten. I'm hoping that more athletes in the book will get copies and then see the book themselves. And I think it's a really important book for everybody, but
It's being shown right now to the whole room.
What?
It's being shown to the whole room right now, very nicely.
I assume my grandparents are the ones doing that.
So where can they buy the book? Anywhere?
Oh, you can buy it on Amazon, and locally, if you want to support a local bookstore, in Terabang Books at Lovers in Inwood.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. All right. Before I thank the ladies, I'm going to thank you first, because thank you for being here. Thank you for what you've done. And just a little quick side story is, I see what you guys are doing, and it's amazing. And I've been doing what I've been doing for over 30 some odd years on DFW TV and radio. And I've worked with women. I worked with Gina Miller on pre and post game Maverick shows on TV for 3 years. And then she got bumped. And everybody gets kicked, fired, that's what happens in the industry. And then I was working at another radio station, and my partner left for the Mets, and I was asked to get a new host. Make a long story short, Jane Slater came on board with me for 2.5, 3 years, and I remember when it was approached to me, I'm like, look, I'm ready, I'll block. And then people from New York and LA called me and said, are you out of your mind? You're gonna have a woman with you on one of the top 5 stations in the country? Are you crazy? I'm like, bro, we got this. I'll block, she can run. And you know what? To Slater's credit, she took a beating early. Social media ripped her to shreds, but we stayed with it. And after about 2.5, 3 years, we had the top ratings at the station. But of course, new management comes in. We all know what happens with that, and they change things. But the point of the story is where you guys are and where you're going, Slater was able to do the same thing. She went to the Longhorn Network, and now she's at the NFL Network and kicking butt. And just like these 3 ladies are doing, they're where they are because they worked hard, and they're kicking butt, and they're taking names, and it's about time you get paid. So keep doing what you're doing. Mitch.
So y'all give it up for Mark, too. My man. So thank you all for coming in. Lakin, sorry you weren't here, but you were great on the screen. It added depth to the whole program, so we really appreciate it, right? So I'd like to introduce our next president, Jeanette, and she will close it out for us.
Mark, thank you so much for being such a delightful moderator. And Becca, Lakin, and Danny, thank you so much for sharing with us and for the history you're making in your careers. Your folks, your grandparents, and we, the Jewish community, are really, really proud of you. I look forward for the opportunity our next year with our amazing board. Mitch Myers, you did a terrific job getting this program together. And he has a wonderful quote that he puts on all of his emails that he does that I have now taken from him. It's nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. And we sure do have it with all the wonderful individuals that are making up our board this year. I want to thank Faith Retzky, who arranged our program to be at Legacy. It's such a beautiful place, and the staff has been so wonderful with us for that. Faith, thank you. And special thank you To Melissa Ackerman, because I needed that balloon arch done, and she spent days getting that for me, so thank you. And I want to thank our terrific staff, Deborah, Jenny, and Jessica. It's just been a pleasure getting to work through the past 2 years, and I can't wait to be even more, to spend more time with you. And Stuart, it's been awesome working with you, and thank you for getting me to do this too. It's just been a pleasure. Please stay for a while and enjoy the food and things we have in the foyer, and thank you so much for being here.